So to take the centre diff out, you will need to undo these 2 screws, the other 2 screws here and here, and you'll have to undo these 2 screws here and these 2 screws here. So to break the seal, undo the 4 screws at the bottom first, it's easier. Put them in your parts tray again. And this is also the way that you replace the spur gear. IF148 is the part number for the spare gear. So you release them 2 screws, then you undo the 4 screws on the top of your diff housing. This will release the fuel guard. There's your fuel guard with the 2 screws on. And if you just hold the air filter out of the way, do the other 2 screws, get them 2 screws out, and very carefully lift this off the top housing, because you will have a little collet sitting on the brake cam. You don't want to lose that. The other one is already enclosed in here. You won't need any problem worry about losing that. So if you just move the brake cams around so they're all clear out of the way, and then your diff should just drop out with your drive shafts. You will notice that your drive shafts, rear ones are longest, so that when you put them back in, the longest one goes at the rear, the shortest one goes at the front. And you're ready to take your diff apart and get the grease out and put some new oil in. So you just pull the one case away from the other with the disc brake. You have to keep the disc brake at the same time. It's one side off with the disc brake. If you keep that brake pads, you won't need to readjust your brakes, and the same with the, and if you want to, just to make sure that you get the right way around, get yourself a marker pen, just write on the disc front, rear, and all, so that you know that you've got, and keep them that way, but you've got them the right way around, because you don't need to take these apart or do anything. You're ready to take your centre diff apart. So again, break the seals of each screw crossways again, and I use the cheat screwdriver. So once you open that up, basically the diff is the same as the front and the rear diff. Redo the same procedure as you've seen in the previous video, but use a 6000 oil in the centre diff. And you can see you've got your pin there, so where the pliers go in handy, and you can take the thing out and remove all the parts. And as your gear disassembled, you remove the big gear and then the 2 small mechanic gears, small grub screw on here. So you'll need a 2mm Allen driver. Just undo that, give it a bash, and it'll fall out, and then you'll see the pin. You won't be able to get the pin out unless you line it up with the small screw hole. I've just done so you can see that in there, push that out of the hole. You can see that halfway out there, so get your pliers again from the outside and you pull your pin out. This will release the other drive cutter, protect diff cups from wearing, take your bearing off, your oil bearing. You can oil these as well, make sure they roll nice and freely. I use a baby wipe. Baby wipe's very good for cleaning up the diff gears. So you can clean all the gears up, just wipe them all clean. You notice there's some little shim washers, be careful you don't lose these. Make sure they stay with the gears. You should have one on the other side. There you go, there's the other one. So keep that on with that one. You don't really need to take this off with the pins. With the grease on the inside of that, you get your screwdriver, you can scrape a lot of the grease out. Just wipe it on the cloth, a few spaces in here to take out. Obviously, you get your ring gear grease, which you can buy from your KYOSHO dealer. You get your screwdriver in the groove, you wipe the grease on, and then you can wipe it off a bit. So to use too much and not enough. And then I go on the inside, just put it on the inside first, just spin it around, and then on this side as well, just to make sure you get all the grease around. And you can see the grease now sitting in the groove. This is what it's designed for, to hold it in, keeps the diff cup shaft and the diff from wearing these to the way. Push your bearing back on. So you've got your bearing back on now. Push that. Then you line the hole up with your diff cup through there. Put your O-ring on. Make sure that sits nicely in the cutout. Should push very nicely if it's lubricated enough. Then find your hole cut out and put your pin back in using your pliers. Find the hole and it should slide into place. Make sure it's in the centre like that. And then place your clean gear. Make sure it sits in the back of this groove. You have to make sure your pin sits evenly in this groove and you're sitting flat. You'll feel it if you hold it with your finger and then spin it around. It should spin around with some force so you can feel the resistance with your finger. Use a 6000 oil. Fill the diff up so it's about halfway full. Just push that so the screws flush, not too far in because it'll touch the gears from the inside otherwise. So once that's in, I'd fill it up just a little bit more than that, just a little bit above halfway. So making sure that you've got both your washers either side. This keeps a good pinch on the diff gear so there's no movement. And then place your gear in the top. Make sure it spins nicely around, which it will do. Then you're ready to grease your other diff cup. So put some grease around that. Yeah, I've got the O-ring out at the moment. So push it in that way, opposite way, just spin it around a bit. You see it's nicely flowed the grease on there, and then spin it around the other way. And you can see there's a good coating of grease in the groove of the drive cup. Place your bearing, just here, just push it on like that. It should just nicely fit. Put your drive shaft through, get your O-ring back on, put your pin, put your pliers. Careful you don't catch the O-ring, chip it out. Make sure it's in the centre. Then you can see that there's a straight line where your pin goes. So if you line that up with your 4 holes the same, it'll be easier to fit. So you just turn around, straight around, put your gasket on top, making sure it lines up with the hole, and just straight down on that, and it should fit. That's gone down evenly. You want it to see that it's gone flat here, and you need to line your holes up with your gasket. So using your small screwdriver, make sure that the holes are all lined up, so you can see the threads. And then you get your screws, and using a screwdriver, just nip them up. So all a cheat screwdriver, making sure it's nice and flat. Near the end, roll one either way, so that you tighten this one up, then across to that way, then across to this one, and then that one back. Then across, and you do it like this. Otherwise, you'll tighten one end tighter than the other, and you go across to that one, across to the final one. And once you've got that like that, gently tighten each one, then feel tight, and then check that you get a nice. We're ready to fit the centre diff back in. Get your brakes and centre diffs together. Front centre diff mount on first with the F on the front of it. Put that away from the centre drive gear. Align the flats. Then push onto the bearing. They should spin freely then. Then we get the rear one, which we marked on there, the R on the back, and put that onto the one closest to the rear gear. So you've got it like that, and that's the way it's going to go in the buggy. Then you get the longest drive shaft. This is the front one. This is the rear one because it's longer. Put that into the rear drive cut, and the same with the front drive cut gearbox pliers. Point in those pliers and lift the drive shaft up. You can see that in there. And place your centre diff into there. This is easier if you put it on a stand, so you can spin the wheels and locate the drive cut into the slots of the centre. You can see I've aligned that little spin on the wheels. Then you have to lift the centre up and make sure that the brake cams line up with the brake aligners in the bottom of the chassis. This keeps the brakes from flapping about and keeps them all drive smooth. Fitting the brake cam, you want to put the front linkage in first. Make sure that this is sitting correctly, because the rear one is going to go on the top. Make sure that fits nicely in the hole inside. Put your bushing on top of the brake cam, then move over top linkage. Then you've got both linkages lined up. Make sure that you don't bend these linkages. And once you've done that, you get your fuel guard with your 2 screws in. Get a screwdriver, just do them up gently. Nothing too tight at the moment, just to make sure you're in position. Move your air filter out of the way, and you can put your 2 screws in here. One there. Just do a couple of turns on the screwdriver just to get the screw started. You can screw in. Then with the cheater screwdriver, just do up gently. And with the screwdriver, make sure they're tight. Move the air filter out of the way. Do the rear ones up, just make sure they're tight. And then you go for the bottom part. You want to put your screws in the back there, and then your hole, and tight one in. Still up a little bit. You go crossways. Again, that one in. Still up a little bit. Do your screw down. And then off the tightness. The screwdriver. Make sure they're both all in tight. Put the car back on the stand. Just make sure it free rolls nicely. There you go. So everything's back to normal, working fine. Brake cams are nice and loose, top and bottom, which is what you're looking for. And that's your centre diff fitted.